And we're live. Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in for, I'll say this week's Hair Transplant channel presents, you ready for it? The Follicle Collective. It's a working title. I don't know. As if you caught the live stream reaction video I did last week, I don't even know what to call this broadcast. I came up, I think I called it Hair Talk last time, but someone else is using that. And been throwing around some names, not sure, but if you got some suggestions, as always, put it in the chat, or even better, down in the comments section as we progress, or after this broadcast where you're watching the replay. So if you haven't been to this channel before, my name is Joe Tillman, and you are watching the Hair Transplant channel. It's the official YouTube channel for my website, hairtransplantmentor.com. Really appreciate you tuning in. And if you don't know anything about me or what I'm doing here, I've been in the hair transplant industry professionally for 20 years now, and I'm a repair patient myself. I had 2 bad hair transplants 30 years ago, and every time I say that, even think about it, it really makes me feel old, even though normally I don't feel old. But yeah, 30 years ago, 22 years old, 31 years ago, I had 2 bad strip surgeries, and they weren't FUT strip surgeries. They were the predecessor called mini micrografting. And bad news, I had 2 donor scars in the back of my scalp, and for the next 9 years throughout my 20s, I didn't have propecia. It didn't become a thing until a few years later, and I didn't even know about it. No minoxidil, nothing like that. I lost all of my hair, all of my native hair. And by the time I was 31 years old, I was a Norwood 6, almost a 7, and I had ant legs sticking out the front of my scalp. So it wasn't a pretty situation. And then I got my first repair in early 2002 with Dr. Jerry Wong of Hassan Wong, and I was the first person on the planet to not live stream, but to blog in near real time what it was like to go through not just a hair transplant, but a repair hair transplant. I was documenting it almost daily, at least several times a week for the first year. And then I got into the industry. I started working for the clinic, and I feel very fortunate because I've turned into such a hair geek. I still love watching surgery, even with, if I'm going to one of the different 14, 15 doctors I work with to their clinic, and it's just fascinating to me. So I've been doing education in this space for 20 years as a professional consultant, working for a couple of world-class clinics for the first 11 years. And then for the past several years, I've been doing it independently, where I work with multiple clinics, but not as a consultant for patients, more of a consultant for their clinics to kind of make things better for them and to help them learn how to educate patients better. So yeah, long backstory there. I tried to summarize it, but that's who I am. That's what I do. And I say that for people that have never heard of me, if you're just now finding this channel. So I hope that's informative. I've started this new format of live streaming reaction videos, and I've gotten a lot of great feedback on this. I really appreciate all the comments of support, and it's really been great. And so I saw this video. Was it 2 days ago? Yeah, someone on Reddit. I started participating on Reddit against my better judgment, but it's actually been pretty cool. And yeah, someone sent me this video, and it blew me away for a few reasons I'll discuss later. But let's get away from me, because I'm not the focus of today's video, and let's go ahead and fire up this video. It's by a guy named DJ. I don't know if that's actually his name, but it's in the title of his channel. I will link down in the description to his channel once this live stream is completed. I meant to do that earlier. Maybe I did. I don't remember. But if I didn't, I will. So let's just get busy on that and have a look at it.
Yeah, 90 days off Finasteride. Here we are. Hey guys, it's DJ. Welcome back to the channel. So as you can see, I lost almost everything. I am back to baseline before Finasteride. Actually, and I'll be honest with you, I'm worse than baseline before finasteride. If you guys aren't familiar with how finasteride works, essentially it's like a pause button on your hair loss. So any hair loss that would have happened while you were not taking finasteride is essentially stopped.
I got to stop right here. I love that description because it's really similar to how I've explained in simplistic terms how finasteride works for patients, and for not being in the industry. I thought that was just a really nice way to put it because it's really easy to digest and it makes perfect sense. It is a pause button. For a lot of patients, the majority of the patients, based on studies and my findings, it's more than a pause button because it's almost like a rewind button, but just a bit. But what he's talking about, how it pauses the loss, that's a great descriptive. So let's keep going.
Or slowed while the finasteride is in your system. And then once you come off the finasteride, it's like a game of catch-up. And it's not just catch-up. You can actually find yourself in a position where your hair loss situation is more progressed than it would have been if you hadn't been taking finasteride. So that's where I'm at now. You can see the hair situation is not good at all. I'll be lying to you if I said that I wasn't bothered by it. Matter of fact, I was really bothered by it, particularly about a month ago, about 60 days after stopping. Because you guys know I made that 30-day video of being off finasteride. And you can see I still had quite a bit of hair, but I think it was around 60 days, from 60 to 70 days, dude. It's like somebody just came with a broom and it swept all the hair off of my head. And I am now, this is my situation. I had a hair transplant, which is what you saw there, the scar there. I had a hair transplant in 2014. So this is essentially hair transplants. I
want to stop here, and you notice he had a strip surgery. And I did a little bit of looking into his history. I think I talked to someone about this. He had the strip surgery in Korea, and I don't know much about the Korean market back in 2014, but I thought it was really interesting that he had a strip. That was around the time that a lot of other countries were really jumping into FUE. So I feel like maybe the timing was not right for him for the surgery, because if you're going to have this short of a haircut, and forgive me, I didn't look back through his history. I don't know if he's always had such a short haircut. In some of the videos I saw from like a couple years ago, he still did, but he's letting the hair on top grow out longer. But not sure why he would be doing such a short haircut after an FUT from so long ago. But I just wanted to throw that out there. If anyone knows more about that, please put a comment. Please put down in the comment section anything that you might know about this case.
Struggling, man. I was struggling around 60, 70 days when the hair really started falling out. To the point where I was like talking to my wife, I'm like, I thought I would be okay with it. Life goes on, and it does. And that's kind of where I'm at this point now, but I just want to backtrack just a little bit to about 60, 70 days. I was like, man, this is fucked up, man. I thought I would lose hair, but I didn't think I guess you kind of maintain like a silver, or not silver lining, that'd be the wrong phrase to use. You maintain a hopeful outlook that, you're not going to lose it all. You're going to be some outlier that is able to maintain your hair loss or whatever, or maintain your hair. That wasn't the case. To put it into context, like I said, my channel has always been about positivity, empathy, and transparency. Like from day one, that's what it is.
And I can appreciate that. But what he's talking about, where he's hoping that he doesn't lose his hair after stopping finasteride, if that were the case, then finasteride would be a cure, because any gains that you get on any treatment, it doesn't matter if it's finasteride, minoxidil, topical or oral, finasteride, topical, oral, laser caps, PRP, it doesn't matter. None of these treatments are cures, because then they wouldn't be treatments, they would actually be called cures, and you could get your 1 or 5 or 10 or however many treatments, and then you could be done. And he understands that, but there was the hopeful, the wishful thinking that was unfortunately naive, as you'll learn, or you kind of already saw from what's going on with the scalp.
it's been about. So this is transparent as I can get. And like I said, today is exactly 90 days since stopping the finasteride. And I don't really see myself losing more hair. I mean, what the fuck else am I gonna lose? You know what I'm saying? It's just one of those things where now I have to come to terms.
He could actually lose more. He's young. I'll go ahead and say that, he had the transplant, and it wasn't just the hair that he was maintaining, and he did have some thickening in the back. He did go through some different sheds. I did go through some of his past videos. And I won't venture to, I might guess a little bit on why that might have happened, because I noticed later on, I don't know if it's in this video or a different video, he shows the box that he's using for his finasteride, and it wasn't Propecia, it wasn't Proscar, which means it was a generic, and he may have had supply issues where the pharmacy that he normally goes to, or if he went to a different pharmacy, it's not the same kind. And if you've been following me, or if you've been watching Spencer Coburn's The Bald Truth with Joe Tillman every Friday, you'll remember that we talk about consistency being key, because not every generic is the same. None of the generics are the same as the original. Some of them still work quite well, obviously, but they're not consistent from brand to brand. And some of the brands may not be consistent within their own supply chain, because who knows where they're getting the raw materials. That may change. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to the possibilities on this. But to reiterate, yeah, I mean, he's only been off of it for 90 days. He could lose more. And there's another thing that he could lose, or an increase in loss that I'll touch on later. I don't remember if he does, but yeah, we'll talk about that soon.
Terms with the current state. I told you guys before in the 30-day video when I stopped taking finasteride for 30 days, I don't want to get back on finasteride. And I meant it when I said it. But given the current situation, I don't know. My wife and I are still planning on trying for a kid this year. So at least before that, we're not going to be, or I'm not going to get back on finasteride.
Now, I want to address this because this is a question I've gotten a lot in my career, back when I was a consultant, and a lot of times since then. And I gotta reiterate, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a professional that's worked in the industry. But in my experience, and the experience of every doctor I've ever talked to about this, when you're looking at stopping finasteride because you're wanting to plan for children, perfectly understandable, especially with a lot of the misinformation out there. But to this day, I still don't recall, I've still not seen a single study that talks about a direct correlation, or even a loose correlation, of men taking finasteride and then there being some sort of issue with fetal development, which is the warning that they give you when they say that females should not handle the medication, be it in topical or oral. And the reason for that is this all came about when you could not get a topical, it's just the oral tablets. It's because the tablets can still absorb through the skin. And the fear was that if it's absorbed through the skin, then that could lead to some sort of issues in fetal development, particularly with the male fetus and the development of male sex organs in vitro. And so that's the fear, but there's not a documented case or anything loosely related to that. There hasn't been that I'm aware of, and there still isn't. But it's tough. It's like I can't blame the guy, because you don't want to take a risk, even if there's zero documented chances of this happening to begin with. But it's something that I think that people should keep in mind. I can't say that I blame him, but then you look at the data and it's contradictory to what everyone's afraid of. But again, not a doctor, but that's just my experience. So let's continue.
Will I get back on it? It's a hard decision to make, man. I was sure I wouldn't, but now part of me's like, dude, my fucking hair situation is terrible. So what I've been looking at is SMP, and I've never been anti-SMP. People have asked me if I wanted to do SMP, scalp micropigmentation. And I always said no. The reason why is because I was already kind of doing, finasteride at the time, so my hair was okay, and I did hair fibers, so it wasn't really a big deal. But now my hair is so I won't say thin; it's so short now. Actually, I completely shaved my head. I was so frustrated. I know I'm hopping all over the place. I was so fucking frustrated, dude. At like 70, I just shaved my fucking head, dude. Like I shaved it bald. Which didn't make it any better. So now I'm letting it grow. I actually just cut my hair yesterday, and this is what I'm working with right now. But I found this really good SMP clinic here in South Korea, and I think that I would be a good candidate now. I didn't think I'd be a good candidate when I had been taking finasteride because it's matching the density with like the length of hair that I want, and then adding SMP on top of it. I felt like it was kind of redundant, especially if I can use hair fibers. I don't know if that makes sense, but like usually people get.
It does make sense, and I remember hearing about these discussions and talking to people about this endlessly several years ago, where people were saying, well, they like to get SMP and then have FUE on top of it, or vice versa, to give it that actual texture. And I understand that, but I don't think that there should be a plan for that, because you're dealing with two different procedures that are highly variable. Because you look at the challenges you got to go through just to find a competent hair transplant surgeon to begin with. Forget about the fact that in his case, he's looking at Korea, which has some really good hair transplant surgeons, but also has some really bad hair transplant surgeons, just like everywhere else. That's one challenge. It's already daunting enough for thousands of guys every year. And then you want to throw SMP into the mix, which in my view is even worse of an industry by far compared to the hair transplant industry, which alone is insane. And so I understand where he's coming from. But what he doesn't understand is that SMP, he says he found a really good SMP clinic in South Korea. What's a really good SMP clinic to him? Does he understand what naturalness means? Does he understand about the long-term ramifications of permanent SMP, where it can change color, it can turn greenish over a few years, it can turn bluish over a few years? And I hope he understands that if he's talking to a clinic in South Korea or anywhere that is saying, the pigment will last or the ink will last 5 to 7 years before you need a touch-up, if he understands that he needs to find out how long that clinic has actually been in operation, how long this practitioner has been performing SMP, because I've talked to dozens of practitioners and clinics that make that exact same type of claim, but their clinic or their experience is only half of what they're claiming the lifespan of that ink to be. So how the hell do they even know what they're talking about? They don't. They're just repeating what they're told by the manufacturers of the ink or by whomever trained them. God knows where they got their training. SMP it can work, and for him it might work really well, but he can't rely on that as a go-to reliable resource to reinforce what he's got now. Let's continue.
SMP when they have shorter hair or they want to rock the bald look. You can do like fill-in, like for example, like this is what I'm talking about right now. If my hair was longer, it would be harder to do SMP and make it look natural because it still has that shine to it, But I think at this stage right now, I think I can actually go with SMP and it would look pretty decent, especially at this hairline length. So it's something I'm considering. It's nothing that I'm going to jump the gun on right now. This will probably happen in the fall. Is probably the soonest it would happen. Hopefully sometime this year we'll be done.
I'm not eating.
You done eating? All right. I'll be out in a little bit. Daddy's filming video. Tell mommy I'll be out in like 10 minutes. Okay? All right.
Sorry, it's my daughter.
It's cute.
It is. Yo, this is funny. My daughter, she's 5. She's 5.
There's some truth.
I remember after I shaved my head, she just came to me and she's like, Daddy, why do you have more hair on the side of your head than the top of your head? And I was like, oh, come on, man. Why you gonna do this to me? I'm your dad. You can't talk to me that way. But she was right. I was like, man, I do have that shadow back. The shadow was back. And you can kind of see it here. I don't know if you can see it, but you can see it, that line right there. Like I said, I'm not okay with this. Meaning, and I don't want words to get twisted. When I say I'm not okay, I am not stopping here. Like I said, I'm considering SMP, Finasteride, like a 5% chance I might start again, but I like to be a last resort. But I don't like my hair like this. Otherwise, I wouldn't be fucking making this hair loss channel, you know?
I got a comment. The guy is really likable, but he comes across as so sincere. Like he's got his 5-year-old kid that comes in and interrupts him, and he's just so genuine. And that's one reason why I like this video, because he has no agenda. He's just out there and he's showing his pain. He's showing his struggle. And he's talking about right now how he's not giving up. And I do appreciate that. And I do understand that. I just hope, I see guys like this, and it crushes me when I know that there's a high probability that they're going to make another mistake. And it's tough for me to watch because I can see the potential outcome, and I have my ideas on what he should do, on what he can consider. I might touch on those here in a little bit, but let's continue. I just want to get that comment in.
I think at a certain point, you should find a way to deal with your hair loss. And this is for everybody, you know? But dealing with your hair loss does not mean shaving your head and moving on with life. Plenty of guys do that. That's the way they deal with it. The hair loss doesn't impact them, whether they're more confident or more comfortable with themselves, whatever the reasoning is. You can shave your head, that's one avenue. You can take finasteride, do minoxidil, that's another avenue. Hair fibers, I mean, I've done both, hair fibers and finasteride, and minoxidil, derma rolling, you know, fucking hair units. You do what you do to deal with your hair loss. So don't ever feel ashamed of doing what you want to do to make yourself feel comfortable in your own skin.
That's great advice, but in today's world where hair loss and bald shaming is perfectly acceptable, it's not really realistic. There are more guys out there. There are more women out there as well that are embracing their hair loss and talking about it publicly. And quite frankly, it's therapeutic. I've been there myself in other situations where I was devastated by a life event that to me at the time was just as bad as hair loss. And I journaled. I wrote about my experience, and I let my not anxieties, but I just opened up inside of a journal and just wrote. I didn't think about it. I just let it pour out. And it was really an interesting process, and it helped me immensely. What he's doing is he's going online, and actually, through my recovery after my first repair surgery, I did the same thing. YouTube didn't exist. God, it's so strange for me to hear myself say that, but YouTube didn't exist. It was 4 years before YouTube even became a thing. But I was uploading photos to, at first, a free Yahoo website that I got with my email, and then eventually my own website. But yeah, so I get this, and I wish more people were online sharing their experiences, both good and bad, like this guy's doing, about their hair loss and things that they're doing to deal with it, even if it's not surgery. Because I think it's important for more people to share so that more people can see that they're not alone. And a lot of people feel like they are alone.
If there's anything to take away from this video, I mean, like I said, you see my current situation, and no, I'm not okay with it. And I think that's okay. I think that's okay to not be okay with it. I'm actually seeing a counselor right now, not for my hair loss. I'm seeing a counselor right now because I'm
some people do
some, like skeletons in my closet, and it's been impacting my ability to be a great father. I'm already a good father, but I want to be a great father. And I'm dealing with a lot of anger issues that stem from childhood issues and traumas and abuse and things like that. So in the counseling session, I was telling them that, this is around that 60, 70 day point when my hair was just like garbage. And I was telling them like, I'm losing my hair again. And I don't know what to do because I'm doing it to have a kid. Like I said, I stopped taking the finasteride because my wife and I want to try to have a second kid. But at the same time, this YouTube channel was my way of healing. Even before finasteride, I had made this channel, and like it was my way of healing and showing that I'm okay.
That's what I just said.
And I told him I didn't know what to do because after coming off the finasteride and seeing all the hair fall out and really being back even before square one, like I lost a lot of ground. I didn't feel okay. And I told him, I was like, I don't know how to face my subscribers and the people watching my videos because my channel has always been about you guys can do it. And here I am, I'm telling them like, but I can't do it. I'm not doing it. It is this. And to be the one to say, guys, I'm going to shave my head and I'm going to live my life and shave my head and I'm good with it, it would be disingenuous because I'm not okay with this situation. I want to do other things. SMP again is something I'm considering. So wherever you are in your hair loss journey, I think it's necessary that you really keep things in perspective. Don't go overboard. Overboard for you may be different overboard may be different per person, person by person. Some people think hair fibers are too much. Some people think hair units are too much. Some people think hair transplants are too much. Whatever your threshold is for what is too much is yours. And don't let anybody try to sway your thinking one way or the other. But understand that transparency is important. And I'm putting myself here in front of you. Like I said, this will probably be the last hair loss, like a dedicated hair loss video I make, because there's really nothing else to fucking talk about. It's gone. It's lost. But if I do SMP, I'll put a video out. You know what I'm saying? And because that's not necessarily hair loss. That's something completely different. So I'm just putting myself out there, guys. I couldn't do it at 60 days. I couldn't do the 60-day update. I didn't have it in me, confidence-wise, and I didn't have it in me energy-wise because I spent all my energy stressing about losing my hair. But here I'm at 90 days. If you're on finasteride for however long you've been taking it, understand that when you come off of the drug, and this goes for dutasteride as well, the likelihood that you're going to keep your hair is pretty much zero. And you're going to be back to where you started, your baseline, or like me, if you've been taking it for 4 years, 5 years, a long time, you're going to be playing catch up on whatever hair loss you would have experienced prior to taking finasteride.
That is a huge point. Remember, we're talking about the pause button that he brought up, that when you take medication such as finasteride, such as dutasteride, and also oral minoxidil, it's in the same category as this, not the type of drug, but its effect. It's a pause button on your hair loss. And for a lot of people, for the majority of people, it is a slight reverse button as well, because a lot of the miniaturized hairs can thicken to where it looks like you have new hair or more hair. You don't really have more hair. It's just the finer hairs have thickened in diameter. They're healthier. A lot of times the color can come back, or they can get darker instead of light brown where they're almost a little translucent. They get more melanin back into them, so you get a little more color. It's a whole different discussion. But yeah, you not only pause and when you stop taking medication, you're not only letting off that pause button and hitting play again, you're hitting fast forward, because you're losing not just, or not just more hair, but you're losing what you would have lost over those past however many years you've been taking it. So that's something a lot of people don't realize. I've talked about this for years. I love seeing this guy talking about that, because hopefully, like, he doesn't have a big audience, but his videos are getting some really nice views. Last time I looked at this, I think it was 10,000 views, and that was yesterday, I think, or last night. Most likely has more now. So that's one thing I think is really important that you understand. if you haven't heard this before, or if you don't know much about finasteride and DHT inhibitors, don't let this scare you, because it's perfectly logical. It's just like with anything in life. If it's not a cure, it's just a treatment. And in this case, you're going back beyond baseline. Your baseline is getting worse. So just really important to understand that. I hope that gets through to some of you that may not realize that. Let's continue this before we wrap up.
Makes sense. Anyways, guys, my name is DJ. I'll see you guys in the next video.
We are wrapping up. Okay, so let me try to switch over here. Yeah, audio. Yeah, audio's on. Okay, guys, this is a really important video in my view, because this shows you what happens. And I've been talking to some people about this recently, and this is why I want to talk about this. If you have a hair transplant, or you're considering having a hair transplant, if you stop your medication after the hair transplant, this is what happens. It may not be as severe as DJ's case, but it will be traumatic for you. And this goes back to, I didn't even think about this, but this goes back to the previous live stream reaction video where I'm talking about mat dominance. And to his credit, he corrected it. But my original issue with his 5 steps was that after your result comes in, after 1 year or so, you can start experimenting with dosages and types of medications just to see what will happen. He corrected himself, and I really give him props for that. I pinned that comment that he made at the top of the comment section in the previous video. But this is exactly what I'm talking about when I was criticizing that point in his 5-step recovery list, whatever. So I can't stress this enough, guys. If you are considering a hair transplant and you're not taking finasteride, you don't want to take finasteride, I get it. I was actually chatting with a guy last night online, and he's in the same situation. He's a Norwood 6, and he does this funky comb-over thing where both sides are brought up to cover the hair loss on top. He's young. He's in his early 30s, and he's not even considered medication because he's afraid of it. But he has no problem hopping on a plane to Turkey to go have a surgery of 4,500 grafts. He was picking some known surgeons. It wasn't, one of these 500 hair mills with 100 patients a day. But still, it doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter the surgeon. It is what it is. He had advanced hair loss. He had a lot of diffused finer hair throughout the area of loss, but he didn't want to talk about taking medication. I finally got through to him, and I put him in touch with a dermatologist I know. He's in Australia. I put him up in touch with a dermatologist I know that can help him as far as the medication goes, and hopefully that will work out for him. He'll be on medication for a year to see what it does for him, because that may reduce the amount of work that he needs because of a turnaround in his hair loss. It can reverse it to a point where instead of 4,500 grafts, he only needs 3,000 grafts. That's very possible. I've seen it many times. At the very least, it will stabilize him so that he doesn't have to deal so much with, or he doesn't have a guaranteed loss of additional hair around the transplant. It's just a greatly reduced possibility. But this guy, DJ, he's the exact reason why you want to take medication if you're having a hair transplant, and you sure as hell need to stay on medication if you have a hair transplant. Because if you don't, this is what's going to happen. And the last thing I want to say about DJ's experience here is he not only lost his native hair, he lost some transplanted hair too. And if you go back and look at some of his previous videos, I spent some time doing that. He never had a really full result, and he was always thin in the back. I don't recall how many grafts he had. I don't think it was a whole lot, but it was certainly a lot more than he has in this video. He's lost transplanted hair, and I don't think that his donor strip was taken from an extreme area outside of the so-called traditional safe donor zone. It may be a little bit low, but it was still well within the boundaries of what is normally considered to be the safe donor zone. But he still lost hair after he stopped taking finasteride. Why? It's because donor hair is not always DHT insensitive or resistant to DHT. We've been talking about this for years. A lot of doctors talk about it. More doctors, however, not only don't talk about it, or they'll actually repeat the old idea from 20 years ago that all donor hair is DHT resistant. If you're dealing with a doctor that tells you this, you need to get up and walk out the door, or if you're on the phone, say thank you for your time, and hang up the phone, or WhatsApp, or however you're communicating with them. Yeah, so that's all I'll say on that. But DJ has had a very bad experience with finasteride, coming off of finasteride. I understand why he came off of finasteride. I can't say I wouldn't either. It's scary. Like, if you want to have a kid, I can understand that mindset. Like, there's no way in hell you want to have anything remotely near you or your wife during this time. So I get it. I get it. It's unfortunate, but I get it. So that's it. Let me see if there's any questions in the chat room. And I thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in on this. I'm not done. I'm going to look at questions, but I meant to tell you before, please hit the like button. I am trying to kick up my game here on the YouTubes. So click that like button if you feel like this is valuable. I hope you feel this is valuable. This is probably the most valuable video I've done in a very long time. And I've done some valuable videos, if I do say so myself. So yeah, please click that like button. Of course, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe and hit the bell for all notifications, because sometimes these aren't going to be scheduled. And if I go live, you won't have any heads up until I'm actually live, and then you'll get that notification. So appreciate your support. Let me go through the questions here. Hey, Bruce from Houston, glad you joined us. Let's see, any questions? Yeah, DJ is an awesome guy. I really feel for him, and like I said before, he's very genuine, and it's obvious that he has no agenda. Like, he's just sharing his own issue, and I like he said, it's therapeutic for him. It helps him, and I can understand that. And I think more people should try that. Let's see. FSK, don't know why he chose Korea for a hair transplant. I can't think they have experience with Afro hair, although he does live there. So, yeah, I think he lived there at the time, and then he moved away, and he just moved back. That's as I understand it. But look, a lot of people don't realize that different hair transplant surgeons will have a different experience. Even in South Korea, it's like, a lot of people may not think, oh, well, they only deal with Korean hair, so maybe they're not so familiar with Afro hair or Caucasian hair, or even other types of Asian hair, like Indian hair, which can be different from East Asian hair. So, yeah, a lot of people don't think that way. They just think, oh, well, he's a doctor. He's done a lot of these types of things, and maybe he has actually done some Afro patients. We don't know. It was 8 years ago. 8 years ago? 9 years ago that he had it done. So who knows? Let's see what else we got here. Andrew Sullivan. How about the Hair Times as a potential name for these live reactions? The Hair Times. Not bad. That's filed. I appreciate that. Let's see. Neil, is it Trestless that you go on Reddit? No, I don't go on Trestless because they banned me at one point. I think they brought me back on, but I was posting updates about Spencer Coburn's The Bald Truth with Joe Tillman. Every Friday I'd put a link and say, hey guys, if you want to call in, we don't sell anything on the show. We don't promote anything. We don't, there's no money involved. And it was funny because for the first while I was on Trestless, I was enjoying it because I was enjoying the interaction with a lot of the members, and most of my postings were interaction with others, like answering questions and helping them out. And I never promote doctors specifically. I don't I'm just there answering general questions because I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to look like a consultant like I actually ran into yesterday and had to smack down. But yeah, so then they banned me, and I challenged it, saying, "Dude, they said, yeah, you're doing mostly promotional posts." I'm like, "No, I'm not." Like almost 70% of all my postings were helping others, and the other ones were, posting a link to a nonprofit show. It is what it is. But I'm on the hair transplants subreddit, and I've been pretty active there for the past couple of days, just because it's been fun. The guys there have been really receptive to me, and it's nice. Doesn't seem to be a lot of problems there. Couple standouts, but yeah, it's for the most part, it seems to be a good group. A lot of, I gotta say this nicely, a lot of naivety, which is understandable. A lot of young guys there that don't know any better. But yeah, just I'm hanging out there. Don't know how long it'll last because it does take a lot of energy, a lot of time away from other things. But I am enjoying it. So thanks for asking. FSK. Yeah, maybe you should reach out to him, Joe. He looks like he could do with your help. I think he knows of you vaguely. Remember him mentioning you for sure. That's nice. Yeah, like I actually wanted to comment in his on this video, but there were so many other comments. I didn't think that he'd see it, and I didn't actually look in the about section. So maybe there's an email address. I don't know. I'd love to help him out, or at least give him my take on what he could do, because I would love for him to be able to come back and say that he made some decisions that he felt were positive, and if I could help with that, that would be, I'd be really happy about that, because he's a good guy. I can tell that. Okay, Thin Blue Line. Joe, I do have a question. I'm 8 months post-op from Dr. Yaker. The top growing well. Question. Seems like the donor repair not filling in. Can I see some improvements in the donor over 4 months? Yeah, you can. But I don't know exactly what you mean by donor repair. Did you have a surgery before, or are you just talking about the recovery of your donor area in general after the surgery? And was it an FUE or FUT? I don't see that you said that. Yeah, maybe you can answer those questions for me. And let's see what else we got here. Al Franny asked me, what do you think that DJ should do now? Would you consider SMP? I think that he should consider, it's a good question. It's tough for him because he's got some roadblocks to success. I think that one thing that he could really look at doing is he definitely does not want to go for another FUT surgery, strip surgery. I have a hard time recommending FUT for African descent patients, simply because the skin type is more prone to visible scarring. Sometimes they'll call it even keloid scarring. There is a higher incidence of keloidal type scarring among those with African descent. It's just the type of skin. And also Asians, that's the second highest incidence of keloid. I would tell him to seriously consider FUE into that donor scar, not all at once, just piecemeal it. Go section by section, just to see how it works out for him. That is something that would be worth testing. Say 300 grafts on one side, and then give it a year, see how that works out, and then address the other half. That would, assuming it's good FUE, that could be a game changer for him, to where then he doesn't have to worry about how to move forward with the donor region and how to camouflage it. SMP, here's my feeling on SMP with donor scars, be they strip scars or even FUE scars. It's unpredictable because scar tissue is not skin tissue. It's a completely different makeup as far as how it's structured. It's more, how can I say it? It's almost like it's more porous underneath the top layers. And I've seen situations where scar tissue absorbed the ink or the pigment, but it didn't disappear. It just kind of spread out, and it created this confluence of color that on Caucasian skin tends to draw the eye more than it would on someone with darker skin. But I've also seen it disappear completely, where it's just it wasn't a negative, it wasn't a positive, it just was a waste of time and money. So it can work. I've seen some cases where it does work, but I strongly prefer some sort of FUE into scar, be it scalp hair or be it beard hair. Beard hair will have a lower survival rate, but it's a better resource for some if the donor or the traditional scalp resources are limited. After that, I would encourage the shave down option. I think he's got a great head shape for shaving. Once that FUT scar is dealt with, I think that he could get away with a much shorter cut. I don't recall the color of the scar. I don't know if it's much lighter than his skin tone. But if it's not, then he could probably get away with that better than he is now. And when he shaved it before, I didn't see when he shaved it prior to this video that what he's talking about. But that's the first thing I would consider. And then if he wants to try to get more hair, then obviously FUE would be the only case. And the good thing is with his hair type, he doesn't need, he's got a large area of loss. He doesn't need 7,000 grafts, 8,000 grafts. Half of that would do wonders for him as far as coverage, because hair like his, really tight, or I don't know if it's tight curls, but African type of curls or follicles with their curl covers more space than straighter hair like Asian hair or Caucasian hair. So that's a benefit to his type of hair. The downside is it's more difficult. There's a higher transection rate, but it looks like his donor reserves are okay. The problem with his loss is that he does have extreme loss. I won't say extreme, but it is aggressive loss. He's almost in that same area that I was, not quite as good as a 6, not quite as bad as a 7, somewhere in between. So ultimately, I think that he's got options. None of them are fantastic, but if he wants to keep the fight going and deal with that, then there's also topical solutions. I also think that oral minoxidil would be a solution for him because, it doesn't affect the human physiology like DHT inhibitors do. It's simply a blood flow issue. So that would be something that I would also think that he might respond well to. But I'm not a doctor. I don't know. But I think those are the options worth considering. Let's see. Thanks, everyone, for joining, by the way. We've got more people in the room. Thank you for joining us. If you're just catching us, this was a live stream, still a live stream, but a reaction video to DJ, forgot his channel name. That will be down in the comments later on. But this guy showed what happens after ceasing all use of finasteride after 90 days. And he lost not just all of the hair that he was hanging on to, he's also lost some of his surgical results as well, and we're discussing that. And I was commending him. I again, like, heartfelt on this. This guy is putting himself out there, and reminds me of Harry from Bald Cafe and those guys there, getting online and for therapeutic reasons, sharing with the world. And so good for him. And also, don't forget to hit that like button. I do this for free, guys. I could really use the support and the recognition that you appreciate what I'm doing. And of course, if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for all notifications. And let's see what else we got here. Mordecai, just got out of a meeting. Sorry I missed. That's okay. Appreciate you joining us. Okay, Thin Blue Line, you're responding to my question here. So he asked about he's at 8 months after surgery, and he's wondering about his donor repair. Is there still time for it to improve over the next 4 months? I said there is, but I don't know about, is it an actual repair or is it his first session? And he says the grafts were placed in the donor region by Dr. Yaker. Full disclosure, he is a hair transplant mentor accepted member. I think he is an exceptional hair transplant physician. after Dr. Arocha's hiccup. Dr. Arocha out of Houston, Texas. A hiccup, I like that. Dr. Yaker filled in 400 grafts along the donor with FUE to fill in the donor scar from Dr. Arocha. Good question. Thanks for the clarification, the details on that. Sorry that you had a donor scar that you felt needed to be repaired. I've been there. I get it. And I too have had FUE into my donor scar, so I appreciate everything you're going through right now. I think that you made a great choice with Dr. Yaker. He does. I've seen some of his scar repairs. Really good work, and I think you'll agree. Really good guy. He's fun to talk to. I love talking to the guy on the phone. You do have more improvements, just like with any other hair transplant. 8 months is early. How much improvement there will be, I can't say. I don't know. And I can't even give percentages like some people give with, the top of the scalp after a hair transplant. I'll just say that there is improvement to come, especially if you're still getting if you're getting sort of pimples or ingrown hairs, then that's obviously a good sign that there's activity. But just because you're not getting those, if you're not, doesn't mean that there's no activity. It doesn't mean there's nothing to come. So just be patient. Continue consulting with Dr. Yaker and give it the next 4 months that it deserves, and you might be surprised. It might be a much better result. Let's see. Philly Boy Fitness. Now, this is a great question. I've gotten this before, but no one's asked me on the show. Why don't you place your hairline lower with a hair transplant? Do you naturally have a high hairline? Well, Philly Boy Fitness, you may not realize, you may not know my history, but the hairline that I have now was placed there surgically after I had 2 bad hair transplants 31 years ago, and 20 years ago, now 21 years ago as of March coming up, I had my first of several repair surgeries, and the hairline is high because I was bald all the way through the back of my scalp, and dealing with only strip at the time. I have had multiple strips. I've had 10 hair transplants total. Most of them, not most of them, some of them, or I'd say 40% of them, were just touch-ups and a scar revision and FUE into scar, a small body hair test, things like that. I always include these things for full disclosure that I have had 10 surgeries, but most of them were, or a good proportion of them were not for moving lots of hair. I've had most of my hair moved in the first 3 repair surgeries. Each one of those was just between 2,400 and 2,500 grafts, and those were to place a new hairline that was lower than the old one, and then it was lowered again just because we could. But I've also had extensive temple point reconstruction where a few hundred on this side and a few hundred on this side, and then I've had the entire top reconstructed. Let me just try to show you here. And then the crown has been completely reconstructed as well. It's still a little thin, but here's the result. That's what it looks like after being almost a Norwood 7 and a repair patient where I had what looked like ant legs sticking out of the top of my head. So I've been through a lot of surgeries to repair a really bad situation. So back to the question, why is my hairline not lower? Well, it's because we didn't know how much donor hair I had for the long term. We certainly didn't think that I'd be going through as many surgeries as I've had. And at this point, I could lower the hairline if I wanted to. That would be tapping out my donor reserves. I still have some FUE remaining. Dr. Wong thinks I have less than I think I have. We conflict on that assessment. I completely respect his assessment. I think I've got more than he's thinking I do, which is fine. But if I do lower it, the question is, will it be worth it? Will it be worth lowering my hairline? And if I do lower my hairline, how low do I lower it? Another centimeter? a centimeter of lowering of my hairline would be, it would take about 1,000 grafts, maybe a little bit less. But in order to lower my hairline, I also have to bring my temple points forward even further. They're not real far forward now. They're pretty far back actually, but they're significantly farther forward than they were before Dr. Wong started my repair journey. So there's 1,000 grafts for the hairline, and then there'd probably be about 400 to 500 grafts per side. So we're looking at about another 2,000 grafts to lower the hairline and to bring the sides forward to compensate for that lowering, because a lot of people don't realize this. The lower your hairline is, the farther forward the sides have to be to compensate, because there's a balance that has to be achieved. And a lot of people don't realize, like, you can see people that have their hairline lowered too much at whatever clinic. The sides weren't brought forward, or they were erroneously. And you don't notice what the problem is, but something looks off. And that's one thing I've always been hyper aware of, and I don't want to have to deal with that myself. So if I were to lower the hairline, it's more than lowering the hairline. It's bringing everything forward and lower to make sure that it looks natural. That's the number one thing that I always look for. I don't, density, great. I have good density. Coverage, awesome. I have good coverage. But if it doesn't look natural, it's a complete waste of time. And I say that because I've been so traumatized by having those ant legs sticking out of my head that I don't want that for anyone. And a lot of younger people, I'm going on a rant, a lot of younger people say, yeah, I don't care about naturalness. I just want it to be, thick as F. And that's stupid, because in about 5 years, you will care as your prefrontal cortex continues to develop into an actual adult brain. You will start to notice. And you'll notice even more when people start asking you if you had a hair transplant. Boy, do I remember that, when my hairline was exposed because my native hair started to move slightly behind it, because my original work was done behind my original native hairline. Once that started to recede, I started getting questions, and that was about a year after my second hair transplant, the old one. It started to recede. Those pluggy grafts, mini micrografts, multi-hair grafts were visible, and people started to ask. And that happened. That kept going on for another 8 years as my hair got worse and worse and worse. And the last few years, it was undeniable, because that's all I had. So, yeah, more than you're asking for, but probably what you deserve to hear. Not in a bad way. Just you need to hear the backstory and the reasoning for why it's not lower now. I could lower it. Sometimes I think about it, but there's better things to do with my life right now, like helping others. So we'll see. Thank you. Some people were saying no more for more surgery. I appreciate that. Philly Boy Fitness follow-up question. Joe, where were you on the Norwood scale when I was 26? I was about a 5. Maybe a 4 at best, and a 4 is an open crown, a strong bridge across the top, and then very thin or bald in the interior mid-scalp forward. But the reason why I wasn't bald in the very front is because I had those ant legs sticking out. There's only 300 grafts in the front, but they're so thick. I wish I had better photos from back then. I was very good at documenting, but I didn't understand the distortion effect that flash gives on photographs. And there were some photos I made, and the quality of them, I'm amazed, because it was from so long ago, with such a small megapixel camera. It was a very early Fuji FinePix digital camera. Still looks really good. You can't blow it up very, very big, but you can see a lot of the damage that was done. You can see the pitting. You can see the mottled look, and mottled being MOTT LED, not like a car model. It looked like orange skin, and it still looks like that, or it would if you could see through my scalp. Like if you shave my scalp, you can still see remnants of that. A lot of that's been remodeled, and that is the MODEL, remodeled through the subsequent surgeries I had, because all those tiny incisions with the beautifully small tiny blade helped to reshape that, and it helped to smooth things out. So when when I reach my hand up into my hair, I don't feel that nearly as much. I can still feel a little bit, but not much. In fact, almost never. So it's been a long journey for sure. And I gotta tell you, I kind of like the height of my hairline. It's kind of it kind of gives me, like I look at myself in some pictures. In some ways, I style my hair. It's kind of low right now. Sometimes there we go, get a little higher, little rockabilly look going on, and it's a lot easier to get that rockabilly look with a higher hairline that's strong than these lower hairlines where you look like you're, 16 years old. It doesn't really fit the rockabilly look. Not that I'm into rockabilly now, but I used to be a long time ago. So let's see. Oh, I like this one. Andrew Sullivan. Another name that I thought about is the Hair Hour with Joe. I like it, but it doesn't roll off the tongue. It's almost the Hair Hour, almost like it's forced. Appreciate that that suggestion, though. Let's see. Morty, I'm not, like, we can try. You can call the number. We can try to take the call. But I haven't had time to work on it since you helped me test it yesterday, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time on that. My phone call system, like I got this system where I can make phone calls. I can call out, but when people call in, you'll hear it, but then once I make the connection to actually accept the call, it goes back to the phone. So that's kind of a pain in the ass. Maybe you know what? Let me call you, Morty. Let's see if we can do that. There we go.
Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice messaging system.
And it goes to your voicemail. Oh, well, that's fine. Let's see what else we got here. Excuse me. Oh, gosh. Still got a little bit of a chest issue from my cold. Any other questions here? Let me scroll back up. If I don't have more questions that I can answer for you, then I will be wrapping things up. In the meantime, again, hit that like button, boys and girls. I'm here for you. And I hope you found this video valuable because, again, I can't express enough how important this guy's message is about maintaining your native hair, if you can. Here we go. Looks like Morty. Let's see if this works. Please work. Morty. Morty, you there? Hello? Yeah, I don't know what happened to you. Yeah, don't try again, Morty. I don't know what's going on with this. And he tries again anyway. Okay, let's try this. Okay. Yeah, don't try calling again. Okay, I still need to work on that. I think I actually need to call support for my soundboard here because it's not supposed to be working like that. It's supposed to be seamless. Yeah, he's still trying to call. See, I think there's another question here. Is it impossible for DJ to get back what he had pre-getting off of Finn if he started back on it now? I don't know, man. That's the thing. I mean, I've seen some people have a turnaround. Actually, you know what? There's a case I remember about, God, I'm aging myself here, 17, maybe 16, 17 years ago. There's a guy that I was dealing with. He was from Seattle, and for some reason he had started taking Finasteride. He was actually taking Proscar, and back then, a lot of clinics were prescribing Proscar and say, cut it into quarters and take 1 quarter a day or every other day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's the way it was prescribed to me, and that's the way I still take it today. I take Proscar, cut into quarters, the original Finasteride, no question about it. Back to the issue. He was taking the original 5 milligram complete tablet from the day that it came out, not literally, or maybe he was, but from when it first came out, he was taking 5 milligrams a day, nonstop, and very dedicated, very religious about this, and hats off to him. And he held his hair. His hair was strong. It looked good. He still wanted a hair transplant. Still wanted if I remember right, it was the hairline, and then he wanted the crown because the crown was still thin, and he was told, and I gotta say, mistakenly told, but at the same time, just following the literature, 5 milligrams was not necessary. So he was advised to cut back and take 1.25 a day, or he might have been told every other day. And he was in the exact same situation as this guy with his hair transplant. He had a hair transplant. It came in beautifully, but then he switched. I think it was after his result came in, he was told to go down. He's told to cut down, or advised to cut down, and he did. And it was like someone blew on a dandelion, gone. I don't recall if it wasn't all of his transplanted hair, but he had enough of a thinning. I think it was a native hair, and it was just his transplanted hair that remained. Forgive me for not remembering the details on this. It was very long ago. But what I do remember is that he was put on dutasteride, because this is when it was first really being considered as a legitimate alternative, and people, like, guys, you talk about dutasteride now like it's the greatest thing. You have no idea. The forums and all the online outlets, that's all people were talking about how it was a miracle drug. Didn't do anything for me above and beyond finasteride, at least not back then. But for this guy, it came back better than ever. So there is a chance. There is a chance. Is it a strong chance? No. I'll go ahead and say that right off the bat. It's not a strong chance, but there is a chance. Why? Because I've seen it happen. So who knows? Philly Boy Fitness, do different ethnicities have different hairline shapes and height? Yeah, absolutely. Like, I won't go into all the differences because they're very, it's very detailed, and it's a very deep hole to go down. But yes, there are differences. Not a whole lot of differences, but they do exist. And I will say that they're big enough to where the surgeon needs to be experienced in those ethnicities to make a natural hairline. So it's interesting that there are people that talk about this as if one doctor automatically should be good enough for anyone because they've seen results on these type of people. So they automatically assume it's going. Just like DJ, probably. He went to this doctor in South Korea, most likely had majority, I think it's logical to say, majority South Korean patients, and he thought, great, yeah, I'm on. Let's do it. And I can't say the hairline shape was horrible. Someone said it was aggressive. I don't know if it was aggressive, because everything I've seen, his hairline looks like it's brushed forward. So and forgive me, I've not analyzed his result to death, but it looks like it's brushed forward. So if it's brushed forward, then the actual exit point of the hairline is probably a bit higher than what we see as the hairline shape. I don't know. That's what I'm assuming, but I don't think it's too aggressive, even given his degree of loss. Maybe. I haven't thought about it too much. And let's see. Any more questions? Let me go back up here. Adele Al-Mutairi. I've done a mustache transplant. And the hair is angled badly. Can it be fixed? Wow. Depends on how badly. Here's the thing. I've not seen a whole lot of bad mustache jobs, simply because I've not seen a lot of mustache jobs, period. It's not that common. Still a fairly rare procedure that I think should be performed a lot less than it is. And what I mean by that is I've seen even some YouTubers getting a beard transplant when they're not really very old. They're still in their mid-20s. My beard was patchy until I was about 32. And then about that time, it exploded. Still a decent beard. I grew out my beard for the first time when I was overseas as a merchant marine. And that's what you do when you're a merchant marine. You become swarthy and salty and you grow out your beard. I was a 22-year-old kid with a beard, and I didn't look salty. I looked like a bearded boy, but it was still a respectable beard to be 22 years old. I had these gaps on either side. I remember that bugged me. And if I was 22 today, and sorry if I was clipping on that. If I was 22 years old today and I had that issue, I would probably go and get a transplant to fill in those gaps. So I understand the need. Back then, it wasn't available. Like, no one was doing that. And of course, it would only be with strip. But yeah, I can understand people wanting to do it. But it's not the best thing to do because it most likely will fill in. Maybe not, but you need to look at all the men in your family on both sides to see how their beards come in. If no one in your family has a strong beard, then yeah, I can see the legitimacy in that. But if they do, and you're in your 20s and your beard isn't there yet, give it time. My beard now I like my beard. I really like my beard. This is not very long. I've had it out like here. There's even some videos from me about 5 years ago where I did it just to see what I could do with it. But it didn't grow in like follicles coming out of my face where I want them to, in other areas where I didn't really need it, but it did, till I was about 32 years old. So back to your question. Sorry for the tangent. Back to your question. It can probably be repaired, but it can't be done in one shot depending on how bad it is, on how many grafts are misangled. And this is not because it's a mustache transplant. It's because it's a transplant that needs to be repaired. And this is something I tell a lot of people. I tell everyone that asks. It's rare that you can repair something in one shot. Because usually, especially now with FUE, you need to remove the offending grafts before you can place in new ones to create what was supposed to be created the first time around. So you gotta remove those grafts and let that heal. Problem is, what do you do with those grafts while you're healing? You got to put them someplace. So if you do have a place in the beard, or if you got a place on the scalp, there needs to be an attempt to recycle them. It doesn't always work. Because sometimes they can be damaged. They're already damaged while they're in the recipient area. They get more damaged during the extraction process and then transplanted, so they don't always grow. But the point being is that has to heal, and then you can go back in with a better doctor if you want to create this mustache and have them placed in at the proper angle and direction so that so they don't stick out like this, which is, I assume, what they're doing. So I hope that answers the question. It can be, most likely, again, sight unseen, and I'm not a doctor, but sight unseen, in general, almost anything can be fixed. It just depends on how much money you got. That's obvious. How much surgery you want to put yourself through, and how dedicated you are to having it repaired. So I think those are good points to make. So I hope that helped. Any other questions here? Mr. Rolandes, he looks like he's answered it too. Yeah, and the scarring, I didn't mention that. So yeah, good point. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah, Philly Boy Fitness. Some doctor told me that if you can't grow a beard at 18, you will never grow a full beard. The doctor was wrong. Not just, like, I'm not just the only case for that. Like, I'm surprised he said that, because that's very false, very, very wrong. Mr. Maserati, hey Joe, do you offer one-on-one consultations? I do not. And the reason being is, well, a couple reasons. I don't want to get into that side of things, only because It can be construed that I am consulting for the doctors that are members of my website and my YouTube channel. And I've worked hard to separate myself from that because I am a professional consultant. I will consult with people from time to time. I will offer my advice if I see that someone's making a really bad mistake. I've offered up my time on Reddit recently to some individuals privately and publicly. But I'm not one of these guys that does these one-on-one consultations because if I made that a regular part of my routine, I'd have to charge for it. And if I charged for it, it wouldn't be cheap because my time is expensive. And it would be significantly higher than what anyone else online offers for a consultation. And it would be worth it, but I don't want to be that guy that takes money from patients. Man, I wrestled with this several times, especially early in my independent career, doing this and doing YouTube and my website. And I really don't want to be that guy because it creates so many problems, especially like the main problem that I was concerned about. And sorry, this is more of an answer than you asked for, but hey, I'm on a rant. I originally didn't want to do it because I didn't want to be the guy responsible for someone's bad decision in their mind. Like if someone said, they went to a surgeon that we talked about whether I work with them or not, or like that's another thing is, I have no problems talking good or bad about any doctor, whether I work with them, whether I don't work with them or not. But the point being is I don't want to be in a position where a patient makes a decision based on a direct consultation. And I learned long ago not to make specific recommendations about doctors that might be the doctor to go to, because I don't want to be that specific. I just want to talk about what the patient can do to find the best answer for them. And there are some things that I will say absolutely are bad ideas based on different things. But the point I'm trying to make here is I didn't want to be in a position where a patient would come back and say, you told me to go to this doctor and I did, and now I'm effed up and you're to blame. I don't want to be that guy. And I've been in a position where people come to me and they do ask me for my genuine opinion, and they are genuinely interested. And even when I'm careful to not make specific recommendations about a specific doctor as if they need to go there, I have had some people make some decisions that they felt that I won't say I was responsible for, but I felt bad for them because it didn't work out for them. And that's another reason why I'm very careful. Anyone I'm talking to, this is a gamble. Doesn't matter where you go. Doesn't matter which doctor you choose. It could be my favorite doctor. It could be any of the doctors I work with. It could be a doctor that you said, hey, is this a good choice? And I said, they have a great record. I like their work. Every doctor out there that's worth considering has had patients that point at them and say, you screwed me up. It's just a fact. And, I saw someone say online, as if it was a bad thing, Joe Tillman talks bad about doctors he works with. Is that supposed to be a bad thing? Is that supposed to be a reason not to, listen to me or follow my channel or follow me on Instagram at Joe Tillman Official? No, I think it shows that I'm not bought. I'm not paid for. My doctors know that. The doctors I work with know that. Sometimes they're not happy about it, but they accept it and they respect it. They sure as hell respect it. And so I find it interesting that someone would bring that up as if it was a negative against me. But it is what it is. Anyway, answer your question, no, I don't really offer a one-on-one. It doesn't mean you can't send me your photos So you go to my website, hairtransplantmentor.com. Preemptively send me your age, your hair loss history on your father's side, your mother's side, medication history. Are you taking finasteride? Are you taking minoxidil, oral or topical for both? Are you doing anything else for your hair loss? Have you had surgery before? If so, where? What are your goals for another surgery? And, what do you want to achieve? If I can get to it, I will. So that's the ultimate answer to your question. Do I offer one-on-one consultations? No. I offer the opportunity for maybe seeing your request to review your case, and then if I can get to it, if I have time, then I'll send you what I think. I'll send you an outline of what I think based on what you sent to me. And I ask for this information up front because it saves time, where I don't have to say, can you send me your photos? And then you send me your photos and I say, okay, great. And all these questions I need to ask. If you do all that first, then it saves a lot of time, and it's actually a much higher probability of you getting a response. And I don't ignore these things. It's just a lot of times when I get these requests, it turns into 17 different emails trying to get the information I need before I can actually spend time to give my opinion, if that makes sense. So, and sorry if it seems like it's being picky and anything like that. It's just I don't have time. I'm making videos, I'm recording videos, I'm editing videos, I'm working with 14 different doctors and advising them on things about their practice. And so, this kind of thing isn't the main thing I do with my time. So I hope that answers it, and I hope it makes sense for you. So any other questions here? Beard of Istanbul, that's good. Okay, so he asked Mr. Maserati, fair enough. Thank you. Glad you understand. Direct question. Do you think Dr. Freitas in Spain is good? I do. I do think he's good. I don't know a whole lot about him. I haven't spent a lot of time investigating him. What I've seen looks good. I did see one case where it's kind of strange. Actually, I had another doctor send it to me that I don't work with, but I'm friends with. He sent me images. It was a Dr. Freitas patient who posted, I don't know if it was the clinic posted it or the doctor did, but it was the donor area fresh after extractions. And he thought that it was his opinion that the extraction zone was too high. It was taken from the unsafe donor area in the crown. And I can see what he's talking about. But when I looked at the native hair immediately adjacent to the extraction points, I saw really strong crown hair on the fringe, on the outside of the crown. And I told him, I told this doctor, I said, I understand what you're talking about, but don't you sometimes think that some of the hair, that just because it's outside the safe donor zone, it may not be unsafe? Because there are plenty of hairs above the donor zone that might be safe for the long term, and even if they're not safe for a lifetime or for 30 years. What if they're safe for 10 years or 15 years? That's an argument I've heard doctors bring up, and I get it. And it makes more sense to me now than it used to, because we know that DHT or donor hair is not 100% DHT resistant, even in that traditional safe donor zone. And again, another rant or tangent. I don't believe in that safe donor zone being confined to where the strips used to be taken. I do recognize and agree that that's where the best hair is as far as density. That's where the sweet spot is. You look on any hair transplant patient that's had any amount of hair loss, the back and sides have areas that are thicker than they are above and below. But I don't think it means that those hairs above or below are any less DHT resistant, because you rarely see these people in old age where they have that very narrow. You do see it. Like there are some memes online where, and even the current U.S. president. He has that. He has a very narrow band of hair in the back, and the hair below, like say the upper nape of the neck and the lower occipital region of the donor region, that's gone. It's gone. Above that traditional strip donor zone, the crown dips really low. That's gone. So I do get it, but that is a rare situation. Anyway, so going off on a tangent there. Let's see. FSK, here's a great question. Why don't you work with Dr. Lupinzula any longer? They made some management decisions that I thought were counterproductive for their long-term success. And one of those decisions were to detach themselves from English language, what they would call marketing. And that was a discussion I had with him multiple times, and he said he understood that. But that's the problem with a lot of doctors or their support staff. They look at someone like me as a marketer, when that's the opposite of what I am. I encourage people not to have surgery, but it's kind of nitpicking. But yeah, they made a decision, and they were scaling back on some of their operations. I'm not going to get into why, but they decided to focus on the French market primarily. They still have an English language rep in the UK. Good guy. I trained him. He's a good guy. But they made a decision, and that's fine. I actually wasn't sad to see them go. It was a difficult clinic to work with. I don't feel like they listen. Well, I know they didn't listen to my suggestions, and that's what happens. I know what I'm doing in this business, and clinics have the option of listening to me, or they don't. And the ones that don't listen to me, they usually go away. And thankfully, it's only been a couple. So, but this is not in the least any sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Statement about the quality of the work that Dr. Lupinzula does. I still think that he is a phenomenal hair transplant specialist. I like his work. I still like his work. I still see the results out there. So it's not a comment on his work, on his skill set, his surgical ability, his artistic ability, and the results that he gets on his patients. I still think he does a fantastic job. So just want to make that clear. Let's see. I'm not going to that one. Okay, Mr. Maserati, thanks for all you do. It means a lot. Well, I appreciate that comment. And I wonder how many other people appreciate that, because I don't see a whole lot of likes on this video. I'm not going to push that again, but I do appreciate all the support, everyone out there. So I think this will be the last question I'll answer. Manesh Gada? Can't see that. Hey, Joe, got my hair transplant done via eugenics, Dr. Bansal. 2 months back, thanks to me following your channel, I found their info. Glad it worked out. I hope I have started reusing iRestore laser after 6 weeks of my hair transplant. I hope it's okay. Well, Manesh, glad my video was helpful for you, or videos. I made several videos about the clinic in general. I think highly of Dr. Bansal. I think she's a good woman. She's a fantastic surgeon. She was the first doctor to publicly speak about something that I've spoken about, and that is the fact that just because a hair transplant 18 months after surgery doesn't look as good as it did 12 months doesn't mean that it's a failure. In fact, it means that the synchronicity of all the hairs that regrew after the hair transplant, all of them are back in anagen phase. That shifts back to their original growth phase. And so that's when you have more hairs going into telogen than you've had over the previous 18 months or however long it takes for that to happen. So that's a different discussion. I've talked about it before. She has a fantastic video about it. When I first saw this video, she didn't tell me she was making it. I just sat there as just like, finally, someone professional and respected validates what I've been talking about. So anyway, what do you think about these tangents I'm going on? I'm giving you guys a lot of inside baseball. I'm not big on adding new treatments after you do surgery, and here's why. I've talked a lot of the people in the room know this. I know I know you've graduated to doctor status now, Mr. Rolandis. Mr. Rolandis knows this because we've talked about it. He knows I've talked about it. When you're dealing with, we'll say, hair loss treatments, the goal of each of these treatments is to either extend the anagen, the growth phase, or to shorten the telogen phase so that more hair is actively growing at any given time. That's the goal. Because we're not creating more hair with finasteride. We're not creating more hair with dutasteride or laser caps or PRP. Maybe with PRP, but probably not with PRP. So when you have been through a hair transplant surgery, you already have a lot of, I don't want to say trauma, but you have a lot of disruption to the scalp. And part of that disruption includes the restarting of growth cycles. Because all the hair that you're transplanting from the back to the top are in various stages of the growth cycle. Most of them are anagen, but some of them are on the beginning of anagen. A lot of them are on the end of the anagen phase. Some are in the middle. But once you transplant them, they all go into telogen, most of them. And then between 3 to 5 months and afterward, they all come back into anagen at roughly the same point. Like they all build up into the anagen phase, and you get your great result. The goal with your laser cap or any other treatment is to also affect those growth phases, to thicken the hair, to create the appearance of more hair. But anytime you introduce a treatment, non-surgical treatment, or even surgical, that disrupts the blood flow, which is what surgical does, or shocks your system like treatments do, and it does shock the system, you run into the chance of initiating a telogen phase. So you're 2 months after your surgery and you're introducing another treatment that can potentially trigger another telogen, which means that your ugly duckling phase can be extended. It can affect what's going on right now, which in turn can affect the future. So I think, like, if it were me, I wouldn't touch shit after my hair transplant. I never have. Once I have a hair transplant, the best thing that I've always believed is to just leave it as it is. Don't fuck with it. Just let it do what it's going to do. And then after you get to your final result, be 12 months, 14, 16, whatever months after your surgery, then you can re-examine introducing new treatments. But to me, it doesn't make any sense. And it can be potentially harmful for at least, I won't say for the final result, but for the development of the final result, to introduce new treatments. I think it's premature. I think it's jumping the gun, and I think it's being impatient. You went to a world-class surgeon. Follow their post-op instructions to the letter. Don't do anything different than what they tell you. And if you have questions about adding something or whatever, then you can talk to them. They'll probably tell you, I don't know what they'll tell you, but this is just my view on it. Because when you do a surgery the right way, you don't need these other things. You don't need PRP after surgery. You don't need laser caps after surgery. I don't even like introducing, finasteride, dutasteride, or oral minoxidil after surgery while you're recovering, because it you don't know what's working. So, yeah, if you just started it, like if it were me, I'd stop. But that's just me. I'm not a doctor. That's just from my personal experience, and it's based on what I think is best for the long-term success and short-term success of a hair transplant. Don't introduce new treatments. I hope that answered your question. I said that would be the last question, but let's see. Is there anything else? I don't think so. Anyway, so what time is it? Wow, we've been going on for an hour and 38 minutes. Oh, hang on. Floating Color says, Joe, what do you say to Rob's statement that a hair transplant does not last more than 7 years? For example, life cycle of a hair. Your hair transplant is much longer, isn't it? Huh? I'm not sure I understand all that's going on in that question there, but I will say the idea that a hair transplant doesn't last longer than 7 years is false. I don't know who Rob is. I don't know if it was someone in the chat room or if it's somewhere else, but that's not true. My old hair transplants, before I even got repaired, they lasted a lot longer than my native hair lasted, unfortunately. They lasted 9 years. In fact, they're still there. Like, they were never taken out. I had one taken out, my last surgery. I had one in my hairline that always bugged me. It was a multi-hair graft that he never dealt with, and I hated that thing. He finally took it out 4 years ago or 3.5 years ago, and love that. But those grafts from 30 years ago are still in my frontal scalp. Those ant legs, they're just well camouflaged with all the work that's been done around it. So no, that's not true. It's not even close to true. Transplants can fall out, but there's not a set time frame, and it's not because of any reason other than the fact that some of those hairs might not be entirely DHT resistant. So yeah, hair transplant or hairs that have been transplanted can and do last a long time if those hairs are generally DHT resistant, which most of them are in most cases. I have seen cases where they have fallen out after a few years and never came back. But for the most part, he's wrong. So I hope that puts things at ease for you. Anyway, my voice is starting to go a little bit. It's been a long one. Thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate the support. I really appreciate the likes, even though it's only 41 likes. Come on, guys. Come on. Give me a few more. If I get 9 more likes in the next minute, I will stay on another 20 minutes, which will make it an even 2 hours. We're at 41 now. If we get to 50 in the next minute, let me start my, let me do a stopwatch. Starting now, we're at 43. We're at 45. 47. By the way, if you guys hear that in the background, I got a neighbor that's putting in some carpet, so there's some construction going on across the hallway from where I am. We're at 48. I think we're going to make it. 50. Okay. You guys did it. You guys want to stick around. I appreciate that. All right. Let's see. Any other questions? Like, there's so much going on. I'm not going to bring up too much because it's a lot of behind the scenes stuff going on. Charlie asked, do we know how minoxidil extends the growth time of hair? I've never been able to find out. That's a great question. I don't think that the actual mechanism has been discovered, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't looked into this in a long time. Back when I was investigating all this kind of stuff, no one had any idea. I think we have a better idea now, but I don't really care at this point. Minoxidil has been around for 40 years, and we know it's safe. And what's exciting is the acceptance of oral minoxidil. And it's interesting because oral minoxidil has been prescribed by even some of the doctors. Like Dr. Jerry Cooley was prescribing oral minoxidil 15 years ago. And so he feels validated with all of the papers that are coming out and the well-respected researchers that are promoting this, like Sergio Baños. I forgot his last name, or maybe that is Baños, out of Spain. He's a big proponent, and once he shared his findings on Global Hair Loss Summit 2020, which is the first year of this global online hair conference, That's when it really took off, because other doctors saw that and they're like, holy shit, this is amazing stuff. And there's actually more research, I think, going on with minoxidil now because of the oral findings than at any time in its history, because so many more people are aware of it, and the results from oral minoxidil far outweigh those from topical in most cases, based on what I've seen. But the way that it works in general, and this is the way that some other things work. Actually, I'm glad you asked about this, because there's something else I want to mention. But the understanding is that minoxidil opens up the blood vessels. It increases blood flow throughout your body, not just your scalp, but because the scalp is the most vascular area of the body. Most people don't realize that. There's already a lot of blood flow going up there, but it's increased. And that's why you get people with, they get flushed. They look like they've been running sometimes when they take it. The scalp will get red if they're using topical, things like that. And it can cause palpitations. There are some side effects of the cardiac nature, simply because of the fact that it's a blood pressure medication originally called Lonitin, Loniten, I believe. And so the actual mechanism on how it grows hair is, from what we know, when I say we, I mean the general industry, it's simply because of an increase in blood flow. And there's something to that, because you're bringing in more nutrients, you're bringing in more oxygen for the cells of the follicle to thrive. And a lot of times it's just about, it doesn't really have any longevity to it. It thickens the hair, and it can last for a few years, but it's really not a big deal. That's with topical. But what we're seeing with oral, we are seeing stronger reactions with oral minoxidil, where the response is thicker hair than what we'd see with topical, or more hairs are being affected positively orally than topically. And it goes back to the reason why I wanted to segue into something else is because I read something on by one of these Redditors, or I don't know what you call them, Redditors, on this subreddit, where he doesn't want to take medication. He doesn't want to take minoxidil. He wants to take rosemary oil. I was like, what the hell? Like, what? And the idea is that when you use rosemary oil, it also increases blood flow in the area of application. No, like it may, but it's not going to do it as much as minoxidil does. So I understand why people would look at that, but I actually found a study that talks about it compared to 2% minoxidil, but who uses that? It's not going to be nearly as effective as what we're doing now. So anyway, I just wanted to address that. Hope that answered your question. Let's move on to the next one. And by the way, I am going to be seriously working on the phone system so that I can get that thing working, because I want to be able to hear you guys. I want to be able to take phone calls, and unfortunately, it's not that easy. It was during my first live stream video reaction, but for some reason, not working out. Sorry, I got a message from my wife. Okay, so next question. Who we got here? Kumodas. You know what, brother? I apologize. I remember seeing your question in a previous live stream. I don't know if it was during the Bald Truth or if it was my last one. You asked this question, and I meant to answer it. I apologize for not doing that. I'm glad you asked again. Apparently, this is on your mind. Joe, do you see a difference between Tiva and Proscar? Dr. Cooley has me on Tiva, but I'm thinking about asking him to put me on Proscar. Wondering your thoughts. I've actually talked to Dr. Cooley about this, not with you specifically in mind. This is before you asked this question. But if you look through the archives of the Bald Truth, and maybe even some old postings I've made online, one of the generics that I have no problem with, and this is based on old information. I haven't looked at Tiva in a long time. Tiva is, if I remember it correctly, it's made in Israel, and it's an Israeli company. And they have a really good track record, not just with Tiva, not just with Finasteride, but with other medications. And they hold themselves, and I think the Israeli government, I know the FDA holds them to a very high standard. And just so you know, the FDA is in charge of all medications worldwide if they're being brought into the United States. The problem with the FDA is when they go to these facilities, and I've researched this, and this is one of the reasons why I'm not big on generics in general, but when they go to these facilities outside of the states, they announce that they're coming. They give everyone plenty of time to prepare whatever it is they got to prepare to make sure they're in compliance when FDA officials show up. So if someone tells you that a generic is FDA cleared, it doesn't mean anything. It means nothing. To me personally, I give 0 Fs about that. I look at reports of people using it, if they even talk about the manufacturer, because there's so many manufacturers. But I look to, like, I'm a brand whore when it comes to this. I stick with ProScar, name brand, original, first run of Finasteride. I would use Propecia, but there's a big cost difference. In general, it costs the same for ProScar as it does Propecia. But with ProScar, you're getting 5 milligrams, Propecia, you're getting 1 milligram. I take the 5 milligram, I quarter it, and take 1/4 of ProScar at a time. Sometimes daily, sometimes every other day. I'm on every other day right now. I would never do that with a generic, or I would never take a generic unless it was Teva. There's probably a couple of, I'm sure there's a couple of other ones out there that they're just fine. I know that for a fact, actually. I just don't know their names. But Teva stands out as being a good one. And I've talked to Dr. Cooley about this, and he said he's had nothing but success with it. And he told me, he said, I understand what you've been saying about generics, and I don't disagree with it. He said, if I ever see any indication that Teva is not as good as it should be, I think the words he used were, if it's not up to my standards for performance, he said, I will not write a prescription for it. I will not recommend it to my patients. So I hope that answers your question. I'm fine with it. I have no problem. Like, I'd take it myself if I couldn't. That would be there you go. That's the one I'd look for if I could no longer get original ProScar or Propecia. I would move to Teva first, unless I found something that was better. But I feel good about it. Based on old knowledge, got a full disclosure. I haven't looked at it in a while. But yeah, I think it's fine. Hope that answers your question. After, what, 6 weeks? Okay, Chris, thanks, Joe. Finn never bothered me, but I'm a bit concerned about oral minoxidil because my family has heart issues. I could do without the shedding phase as well. LOL. I get it. I'm not going to answer that question. I'm not a doctor. I'm sure as hell not a cardiac specialist. I will simply say, speak to your doctor about that one because, look, that's, I think I've talked about this before. I'm not crazy about the idea of oral minoxidil for myself. I remember reading the side effects of minoxidil, topical minoxidil, around 1997. I was living in Atlanta, Georgia, and that was the first time I decided to actually be proactive about my hair loss because it was just getting so bad. It was so bad. And I got a prescription. I looked at the box, I read the side effects, and I wasn't crazy about it. I used it. It was 2% back then. I don't remember having any sort of issues. Or maybe I read the side effects after the fact. And when I read the side effects of palpitations or whatever the verbiage or the words were that they used to describe it, I put the box down and I never picked it up again. That shit scares me. Especially now. I'm 53 years old. Like, I'm fit. I'm not fat. I'm not overweight. I'm not obese. I don't have diabetes, anything like that. But it still weighs on the back of my mind. So I get it. I get it. Talk to your doctor about it. You do you, man. But do it after you speak to a doctor. Take this seriously. Okay. Next question. All right, this will be interesting. Viticola. Hey Joe, I just switched to 1.25 mg versus 1 mg a day on Finasteride. I was on 1 mg a day for 2 years with good crown results. Is the increase in dose resetting the 2 years for full results period? That's a great question. I can think about that. I don't think I'll come up with a good answer. It's only a quarter more, which means it's 12.5% more. Is that right? Am I doing that right? No, 25% more. That's right. That was silly. Maybe. That's a good question. Like, I don't know. I think that, no, I don't think it resets the 2 years, the 2 year status or the 2 year improvement window of efficacy, but I think it may help, but I would be surprised if you saw a benefit. I'll leave it at that because it's yeah, I'll say no. It doesn't into 10 years for some of the participants in the study. I wish I had that in front of me. Anyway, so yeah, we are getting close to shutdown time. 5 minutes left. What are the questions we got here? Viticola, maybe the universal answer. I know. Sorry, I've never had that question before. I never thought about it. Another question. FSK is 2.5 mg every other day and 1.25 every other day. Okay. Or should I be consistent with the amounts? Assuming you're talking about finasteride on all of those, you know, I think as long as you've been on it for long enough for it to be saturated in your system as much as it can be at such a low dosage, I think if you're screwing up on your dosage just because I don't know why you're doing this, because you're just too lazy to cut it, or you think that this will be a boost for you. I don't think it would be a problem. It certainly wouldn't cause a shed. I'd just try to be more consistent with it, because you don't, like, why risk it? You know, if you're going to be at 2.5, stick at 2.5. You're going to be at 1.25, stick at 1.25. Don't fluctuate with that. Stay consistent. That's the key to life, to everything, consistency. So apply that to your medication. Pro Hair Clinic in the house. Thanks for joining us, S&P people. Hair pigmentation. Good to see you. Eric asks if ProScar loses effectiveness when it's cut. No, I've read that. There's no reason for that. It doesn't make any sense. The reason why I read someone say that it loses efficacy is because, if I remember correctly, when you cut it, you don't know if the piece that you're taking has as much of the active ingredient as any other piece. And I think that's highly naive about how pills are made. The pill is the active ingredient is mixed with a filler, but the key word being mixed, and the mixing that these drugs go through, it's very, I'll say thorough. It's like a cake mix. You don't have more sugar in one part of the cake than you do another part of the cake, or more. You know, the whole purpose of mixing cake batter is to get your sugar evenly mixed, your flour, your egg, everything evenly mixed. And that's the way it is with pills. If it's done right, like, you got to assume that, at least with better manufacturers. But no, that's the way it works. So to say that cutting it reduces the efficacy as compared to, say, a 1 milligram Propecia tablet versus if you could do a 1 milligram portion of a ProScar tablet, I think it's ridiculous. It makes no sense to me. Hope that answers your question. Sergey, spasiba. Joe, how many grafts does a typical FUT plus FUE donor have? Tough question, my friend. I'll say this. All this depends on the practitioner and how they manage the donor area, and if you're sticking with that practitioner through your transplant patient career, if that makes sense. Assuming all that, if you go and have, you know, as many strips as you safely can, where the physician says you're done, it's a little tight here, we're not going to go for more of these. From now on, you're moving on with FUE, and let's assume it's a Norwood 6 because that's the type of patient that would benefit most from this approach. The average FUT patient over X number of surgeries will have 7,000 grafts, maybe 8, maybe 8,000. Again, assuming average laxity, average density. In my case, I had average laxity, but I had below average density, but I had something different than a lot of patients, and that's above average, I'll say laxity recoverability, where the laxity of my scalp would recover, even though we never got more than 2,500 grafts in one session. 2,488 is the largest strip session I ever had. We couldn't go bigger than that because it was too tight every time. But it would always recover, not always, but it would recover enough over the subsequent surgeries to where I could still get in the 2,400 to 2,500 range. And then we cut it off because we don't want to go there again. The occipital donor scar had stretched too much, and that's when, okay, done. I had 2 more strips, but they were on the bilateral donor areas. 1 strip here, 1 strip there, separate, but they still join the back scar. So yeah, a little more detail than you probably wanted, but that's how I was able to get so much strip surgery. It's because I had a doctor that was creative and understood the limitations of the donor area and successfully navigated that minefield. So again, I'm not the average patient. So when you're looking at the average patient, let's just say 7,500 grafts for argument's sake, and he's got a good donor average. He's probably got, again, characteristics dependent, practitioner dependent. He probably has a solid 2,000 grafts left via FUE. Maybe more. Like, there's always going to be outliers, certainly maybe less outliers for that as well. But I think that is a safe guess based on the general question that you asked. That's also a general answer. So we'll say about 2,000 more grafts via FUE. I've had, with all the surgery I've had, and my donor isn't the best, especially after so much strip I've had. I had 700 or 800 FUE with Dr. Wong back in 2019, and I think I've probably got another 1,000 because I think that the sides of my scalp can be utilized more than they were in my last surgery. I may not have that many, but still, that would put me in that 2,000 graft range, and that's being hopeful. That's fingers crossed on that one. So if I ever need it. So I think, yeah, we've gone over. Thank you so much for everyone's support and for watching this. This has been fun. Like I wasn't able to, I didn't even try to get the phones working today. I was working on it yesterday, but I just don't have time to really dive into this stuff the way I want to. I'm a geek on this stuff. It's really fun to work on this stuff. I just don't have the time. So I'm going to try and make the time this week to get this worked out to where you guys can call in and we can hear your lovely angelic voices throughout the interwebs. So again, if you haven't liked the program or liked this video, please do click that like button. I see someone just did. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And if you haven't subscribed, look, I'm doing this a lot more, we'll say impromptu. When I see something that I think that you guys want to see or that you should see, I'm going to bring it to you. And that means not so much of a schedule for this solo live stream that I'm doing outside of the Bald Truth. So the best way to, like, if you think this is valuable, if you're learning anything, and it's more than just loving the sound of my sexy voice, how you doing? Then hit that subscribe button, but then ring the bell. There's an option for a notification bell where you can get all notifications as opposed to recommended or like letting YouTube figure out what you might want to watch. Click all notifications so that anytime I'm live, or there's a video uploaded on the hair transplant class series which I hope to do another one soon. Or when I'm talking about one of the clinics that's been accepted as Hair Transplant Mentor member clinics, then you'll be notified. You'll get that notification in email, or if you're on YouTube, it'll say, hey, Joe Tillman just went live. And that will hopefully be beneficial for you. Also, you can follow me on Instagram. I'm really pushing that one hard. I'm having fun with it too. I just crossed over the 5,000 follower mark. It's not a lot, but it is for me. Never been there before. And I can appreciate your support. That's at Instagram. It's at Joe Tillman Official. It's pretty easy. Joe Tillman Official on Instagram. Do me a favor, go over there and click that follow button. And I can appreciate a few of the likes on those reels I've been putting out. They're fun. So anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Really appreciate the support again. And I will be doing some more reaction videos. If you got suggestions, if you want me to review or react to any videos that you've seen out there, put the link. I don't know if you can put the link in the comments section, but you can DM me on Instagram. Again, that's at Joe Tillman Official, and I'll check it out. And who knows, maybe it'll be the next video I review during live stream reaction video. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye-bye.